I bet many of you wanted to put a concrete slab someplace but didn't know how to do it. Hi, I'm Pappy Tinkers. Follow me and we'll learn together.
I'm going to build steps on this side to make it easy for both the dogs and us to get into the backyard instead of jumping. We're not quite as young as we used to be. But one of my concerns is, due to the railing up there, the rain falls and you can see a part where it's just washed out along here. So I'm thinking that a concrete pad needs to go right here. I haven't built one of these before, so it's going to be an interesting challenge. Well, I know the first thing we need to do is to make some measurements of what I want to dig out, where I want to put it, and then we'll go from there. .48, because we want it to come out a little bit further than the last step. And we'll go for we'll go for 3 foot wide, just to give it enough room to make it so it doesn't wash out in case we get the big storms down here. We're going to try not to spray paint the dog, but he doesn't seem to want to move. I think we can get it the rest of the way without bothering his nice shady spot. So then the next step is going to be digging this out, making it flat and level, and building a box frame around it for the concrete. Alright, let's get started on this. Digging this out. Hopefully the dog will either move or help us. As you can see, he hasn't moved much. Nice boy. Now, I don't know if leaving the rest of that root in there is going to cause problems further down the road. I'm not a concrete worker, but we'll check back in a couple of years and we'll find out. You might notice that the style of my form is a little bit different in that I have what's going to be the back row actually on top of the 2x4s instead of behind it. And that's because I'll be butting this up to a cinder block wall that's already got the concrete, and that way I'll have a much smoother seam instead of a little gap in between. So let's go ahead and screw these together. We'll drill some pilot holes and get it all boxed together.
I really had no idea if this would work or not, but I thought I'd give it a try. One side of the pad was where the ground had been washed away, so the form wouldn't have any support on that side. I thought this may be enough to prevent it from moving and making the concrete an awkward shape.
I picked up some steaks at the box store where I got the Sackcrete, and you can get them already pre-cut. For me right now, it just saves a little time, but certainly easy peasy to make. Just cut some stuff with a point on it so that you can drive it down. And what we're going to do is drive these down to make sure that the form does not move. If you got any left over, perhaps they'll come in handy if this virus breaks and turns people into zombies. I should probably point out already that I leveled this out the way that I want it. So it's got just a slight angle so that the water should be flowing down and away from the rest of the carport and garage and house. I'm going to backfill some of the area around this just to help make sure that the Sackcrete concrete stays where it's supposed to be and not all over the yard.
Wet the gravel or the sand down a bit before you make your first pour. I figured since this area was all sand, there was no need to add gravel. Get the boards too. This is supposed to help with the removal of the form later on when it dries. Here is where I make my two biggest mistakes, compounded by some smaller ones. I read the instructions the night before and thought I remembered how much water to add, so I didn't add enough. And I was guessing by using old water bottles. Don't be a cheapskate like me and go buy a bucket or a tub that shows the markings. Read the instructions again before you cut open that first bag and know for sure how much water to add. My second biggie was buying the cheapest wheelbarrow thing I could find. While this is great for some things, it just sucks for trying to mix concrete in. I'll show why a little bit later. I spent at least 10 minutes trying to mix up these first two bags and trying to add enough water to it. They say that adding too much water really weakens the concrete, so I just kept adding small amounts at a time. Make no mistake, mixing this stuff is hard if you're doing it by hand like this. And I was really bumming because I knew I'd have to do it a bunch more times. Here is one of the reasons why it was so difficult to mix the concrete, even after I found the proper amount of water to mix in. All of these shelves and different levels made it a real bear to get it mixed thoroughly. It was just too hard to get water in all the nooks and crannies. I ended up pouring part of the water in the bottom and only mixing one bag at a time. I could have saved myself a lot of aggravation by spending $10 more and getting a regular wheelbarrow, and that's what I'm going to do for the next one. Don't get me wrong, these plastic ones work great for some things. Dirt, sand, leaves, mulch. Just not mixing concrete. And I'm not sure this kind would work better either, with all of its grooves on the bottom. Well, here it is, my first pour. And you can see by the dust and the dry stuff where some of it still didn't get mixed in. I do this 7 more times for a total of 10 60-pound bags of concrete used. I'll include a link in the description of the website I use to calculate how many bags that you'll need. I ended up using less than the recommended because when I made my form, I also made the mistake of buying the shorter 2x4s, not the 8-foot ones. So when I made my cut at 43 inches, I really didn't cut it in half. And that goes back to the old saying, measure twice, cut once. At some points while spreading it around, I picked up little bits of the dirt or sand from the bottom. I'm pretty sure this is something you want to avoid, but since this is just a foundation for some steps going into the backyard, I wasn't overly concerned since it's only going to be people and dogs putting weight on this. Perhaps someone will add in the comments if this is a bad thing or not. So 8 more bags of concrete later, here we are. I had used a piece of 2x4 to get the basic leveling done. If I had been smart, I would have had one cut and ready to use that was the width of the slab. I had got this little wooden leveler thing at the box store for around $5. I'm not overly concerned with how smooth I can make it since steps are going to be covering the vast majority of it. I was very pleased that the extra time mixing up the concrete one bag at a time, the other layers didn't set up. I also could not remember how long you were supposed to wait before doing the final smoothing. But since I had to go meet some friends a little later, I needed time for a shower and a change. You'll definitely need a shower after all this.
Well, there it is, for good and bad. The first attempt at pouring a concrete slab. Definitely learned a few things about this that I would change for next time, that I will change for next time. We're going to let that sit for a little bit. Of course, you know I got to put my initials in it, just cause. Or maybe Cannon's paw print. Alright, now to clean up some of this mess. Well, here it is. The next morning, I didn't get to take the form off last night because I had other arrangements to do. It's holding up the leaves. Seems sturdy enough for dogs and stuff. Alright, I don't know if it's completely cured enough, but certainly enough for this. Now we're going to work on deforming it. This is going to be a little bit harder probably because I screwed it together instead of nails, so just pounding it won't be enough. That was probably the easiest part of it.
One whack, that's all it took. I was amazed.
If we zoom in a little bit over here, you can see it's nowhere near as smooth as the rest of it, and not entirely filled in exactly the way I'd hoped for, but you can see that it still works if you ever want to put a form together in that same way. That's probably what you can expect. Possibly, if I wanted it smoother, maybe I should have taken that board off a little bit after the stakes were in to smooth out that area like the rest of it. We'll keep that in mind for concrete pad number 2. Let's not have the butt pointing at the camera the entire time. It's supposed to be Pappy Tinkers, not Pappy Flashes. Well, that wasn't anywhere near as hard as I thought it would be. Remember, I did wet down the wood before I started pouring, so that might have helped it release. I don't know that I could ever use this wood again for any other projects, but I do have some more pads that I'd like to build, and this should be plenty fun for that. Bop it with a hammer, knock some of the little bits of concrete that are still on here, and it'll certainly be good enough for that. And there you go. That is my first concrete slab. Yes, we did get the doggy's initials in it. He wasn't too keen on having his paw stuck in it. It's not the prettiest, but it'll certainly work for what we're hoping to do, which is going to be another video of building a set of steps to come down from this walkway so the dogs can go straight into the backyard, and us too. Maybe lazier than walking around to the gate, but more convenient, certainly more convenient. We're going to backfill in that pad a little bit so less of the concrete edges are showing, because I'm pretty sure that's going to hurt a toe when you hit it with that. There we go. And there's Big Boy over there. Smile, Cannon. Oof, oof, oof.